Jolly good. Are we all good to go? Shall we hit go?
Yeah.
Cool. Welcome everybody. Well, welcome to Live from the Archive. My name is Tom. I'm an engagement learning officer here at London Metropolitan Archives. We'll just thank you. Turn the sound off. So, as you can see, we have an audience in person. So, welcome in person. We have an audience at home. Welcome, audience at home, for this series of events. So, the Live from the Archive series is an event series where we take a look at either a single item or a couple of items on display on the exhibition. Current exhibition, which is actually closing soon, is Magnificent Maps of London. It features many of the, a very small selection of a very big map collection that we have here at London Metropolitan Archives. And today we're going to be looking at just one map, the map I have in front of me. This is a map that dates back to around 1618, 1620. And what we'll hear about this map is, we'll hear a little bit about the object itself. It has sort of an interesting provenance, it has an interesting materiality, and we're going to hear a little bit about the circumstances of its creation and how it was used many years after its creation to serve an entirely sort of separate purpose. Really a microcosm of the ways that archives can be used. So the map exhibition that we have on that at the moment is a mixture of facsimile maps, so that's digital reproductions of maps, printed maps, and maps such as this, which we call a manuscript map. A manuscript map is simply sort of archive jargon for something that's been handmade rather than printed. Manuscript maps are often very rare, or in this case, unique. So this map, in contrast to some of the other maps on display, was never reproduced for sale. It was made for the purpose we'll hear about in a moment's time. So there's only one of these maps in existence. In terms of the provenance, as we say, it's about sort of about 400 years old. Dates back to dated between 1618 and 1620. It's made of parchment, so parchment is animal skin that can serve a function similar to paper, and it's made with ink, I think iron gall ink, and then coloured inks as well. The ink that we see is actually a later edition. So this map was damaged following a bombing incident during the Second World War. It was water damaged when it was stored at the Guildhall in the City of London, and so some of the text has been re-added later on. Not something that we would do today, but a decision that was made then. So that's part of the reason that it is so fresh, the ink illustrations and legends. You can see, you get a sense of, I think, an element of water damage. It is a bit crinkly, that is the technical term. I think cockling is actually the technical term, but you can see that it has those sort of waves from the water damage. And some of the inks are a bit faded. Now, I couldn't tell you whether that's a result of the water damage or the depredations of time. The main thing that we can see there, where we would suspect there's been some fading of colour, but we can't prove it decisively, is at the top of the, as you're looking at it, the right-hand side of the map. And sorry, Jack, can I just check that we've got the map on the screen? Thanks for that. We can see the River Thames marked, the River of Thames. It's this sort of washed out green colour. Now, to our mind, it is obvious that water on maps would be blue, but like anything, that is a convention that developed over time. So it might have been that the map maker did it in green originally, or as you sometimes see, blue pigments do fade to green over the centuries. So it could be one of those two things. Drawing your attention to this end of the map, you might notice that it says north on the right-hand side. So this map is not orientated to the north as we've become used to. But that in itself is a convention that developed over the years. And indeed, the fact that maps weren't orientated north is hinted at in the very term that we use to describe that orientation. So orient, of course, is another term for the east, and older maps would be oriented. That is, they would face the orient, they'd face east. So that's something that we can bear in mind, that not all maps need to face north. So we've talked a little bit about the provenance and the layout of the map. It's orientated in a direction that's sort of slightly unusual to us. What does it show? Well, it's called a plan of Bankside, and therefore there is of course a clue in the name there. So this is the area around the south bank of the Thames, around Southwark. It would have been St George's Fields. That area. It's the home to the Globe, the Swan, the famous theatres of Elizabethan and Jacobean London. The orientation of the places in relation to each other is basically accurate, but there is no scale, and it is not a map that is made to scale. There is some distortion of the distances and the roads as well. The origin of this map is a court case. It was a dispute between the effectively the borough of Southwark, ancient borough of Southwark, and the City of London and the Bridge House estates, part of the orbit of the City of London. And it's a dispute over trade, effectively, and it's a dispute in particular about basically who drinks where and who stays where. So we're on the south bank of the Thames, you'll remember. This was one of the main thoroughfares, one of the main ways in to the City of London at this time. So Borough was famous for its hospitality, both in sort of licit and sort of illicit ways as well at this time. That was partly because there was more scope for sort of licentiousness outside the strict boundaries of the City of London, and also to do with the city being a walled city and the gates closing at night as well. So if you tended to stay in the city for business and stay in Southwark for a good time. And so what we can see here on this map, as I say, going from south to north, but going from left to right across the map, is the main way in to the borough of Southwark. And then you can see there's a road sort of slightly highlighted in red coming off that main way. And if we were to follow that way round, we can go round the fields, we could end up on the south bank. These little houses, it'd be hard to read, but take my word from it, one of these houses is marked the Cat, another is marked the Falcon, and these are public houses. What the enterprising people of the South Bank have been doing, they've been using this as a new way across St George's Fields to basically take business away from the innkeepers a bit closer towards London Bridge on Borough High Street. The innkeepers at Borough High Street have not been too happy about that, and they're paying their rents effectively to the City of London and the Bridge House estates, and they've asked them to intervene on their behalf. And what this legal case basically hinges upon is whether there is a right of way across St George's Fields, because if there isn't, then this can be closed, and it then becomes quicker to get to the pubs in Borough rather than the pubs on Bankside, and quite a lot of money is hanging on that. The mark is actually, the map is actually marked the chain gate and the way in question. And we know from records of the City Comptroller's Office, we're actually able to follow this court case. And whilst it was in the business of being settled, physically a chain was put across the way in question until it could be played out. It was played out over a course of about 2 years. And eventually, we find that the City of London lose their court case. So they have to pay damages to they have to pay the costs, and they have to pay damages to the Borough of Southwark. And it was in the money of the day, it was £6, 13 shillings, and I forgot to round in pence. I think it was about 30 pence, which in today's money translates as £880, but the translation isn't perfect. Often what you lose in these historical translations is what £880 would buy you, in contrast between then and now. So I did a little bit more digging, and I found out that £880 in £6, 13 shillings, and I think it was 30 pence, but I do forget, in the money of 1618 would buy you 3 cows. It would buy you 19 stones of wool, and it would be the wages of 133 days' wages of a skilled tradesman. Which then did lead me to ask, how much is a cow now? And a little bit of digging, turns out you can get a cow between about £1,500 and £200. But that was Highland cattle, and I have no idea if they cost more or less than your average cow. But if you can get 3 for about £1,000 if you're prepared to give them a nice retirement. So just to give that some kind of sense of what that means. one of the nice things about this map is it not only tells us this sort of interesting story, it's kind of, you can reach back in time, you can sort of picture that dispute, can't you? It's the kind of thing that goes on today, people fighting over London tourists, you know, businesses trying to do their best to get it. It's a very kind of story that translates through the ages. But it also tells us a nice thing about how archives can work and dare I say it, not always work, because this map disappeared for a few centuries. I wouldn't go as far as to say we lost it because we knew where it was, but what can happen, I think it's fair to say, is we sort of forget what we have. You know, things are nicely kept, they're nicely stored, and then we forget that what we may or may not have and how they might be useful. In 1955, a new volume of the Survey of London was being published. The Survey of London might be familiar to some of you here, familiar to some of you at home. It's a very long-running, goes back to 1894, a very long-running history of London with a particular focus on its urban development and its architectural history. And this map emerged as a result of that research, just in time. It's part of the records of the City Comptroller, then kept at the Guildhall, and it kind of emerged in that way. So it tells this nice story of archives, I say, lost a bit strong, but kind of fading in and fading out of view. And really is the sort of the final point we'll talk about today. There's this nice idea of that something can be made for one purpose. So we heard how it was made to settle this court case, but it can then be used for an entirely different purpose. So although there's distortion on the size of the roads and the shape of the roads, those sorts of things, we believe the relationship between the places is accurate. So we're not worried about the way in question. We have a different way in question. This is Maiden Lane, which you can see runs sort of parallel with a bit of a dogleg to the river there. And just towards the bottom of the map, you can see it's marked the Globe. Well, that's Shakespeare's famous Globe Theatre. And during the 1920s, there was quite an ongoing dispute among academics to do with the exact location of the Globe, and in particular, it hinged upon whether the Globe was north or south of Maiden Lane. And I sort of perused a couple of the pamphlets and had that classic tone of, you can tell the academics are very, very cross with each other, but they put it very politely and verbosely. You can sort of see it coming through see it through the pamphlet. But this has sort of refereed, settled that dispute, because we can clearly see the Globe is marked south of Maiden Lane, so it kind of put that dispute somewhat to bed. So a nice sort of way to finish how we can see archives are created for one purpose, and they disappear from view for a few centuries, and then they re-emerge like a wizard just on time to settle a dispute. So that's a little bit about this plan of Bankside. I'm very happy to take questions, both from people who have joined us here today and for those at home. But before we move on to questions, I'll just say that the exhibition is coming to a close. So we are running till the 29th of March, so about another 6 weeks or so of this particular exhibition, and then we'll close, and it will be replaced with a new exhibition called Unforgotten Lives, and the series will run through that next exhibition as well. So over to you. Any questions? Yes, in front of.
A few times you mentioned the Guildhall. Are you referring to the Guildhall archives or the Guildhall Library or the Guildhall?
Thank you. Yeah. Great question. So just so everyone can hear, the question was which Guildhall was I referring to? So it's the Guildhall, as in the sort of the town hall, as it were, for the City of London Corporation. And what the arrangement is that lots of records that were once kept at the Guildhall now predominantly live here. But there is still an archive there. Excuse me, there still is a library there that you can use for research, and some of the archives, in particular, for example, livery company archives, are still accessed there. But what we effectively sort of see is that the chain of custody is that many things lived at the Guildhall for a while and then came here for access and longer term storage. Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions?
How do we know that the location of the Globe wasn't drawn on after the water damage? You got it wrong.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, that's good. So the question was, how do we know that the Globe wasn't drawn on afterwards because of the water damage? So You can see, if you look at it with a magnifying glass, you can see the original the palimpsest, the indentations on the map, which is how it can be, its provenance can be determined. But yeah, good question. The same thing did actually cross my mind as well. How do we validate that? Yeah, but thank you. Yeah. Thank you though. Yeah, jolly good. Are there any questions from home, Jack?
Yeah, Deborah asks, is the name of the person who made the map known?
Oh yes, thank you. I forgot to say thank you, Deborah. That's a good reminder. Yes. So the same record. So what we were able, what now retired and probably late colleague at the Guildhall was able to do in the 1955s was able to then cross-reference the story behind this map with other records. So as I say, the map had faded from view, but from other printed sources, in particular the Diary of Edward Allen, it was known that there was a court case around this sort of time, and then other records were found, and there's a record of the name of the surveyor and the name of the surveyor and the map maker, and it appears he's Ralph Rathbone or Rathborn appears. No, he appears in that confusing way of records this time, slightly different spellings. So in February 1618, he's described as Ratsburn, and then in November 1620, he becomes Rafe Rathbone. People more familiar with the convention this time can probably find out that that's actually pronounced the same. But yes, that's the thing. And we believe he surveyed it as well as actually produced the physical object. Thank you. Are there other questions from you?
Not at the moment.
Jolly good. Any questions? More questions?
You said it hinged on the question of a right of way.
Yes.
So did that then establish a right of way that sort of still exists?
That's a good question, and it's the mark of a good question that I'm afraid I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know. So the question was the right of way. Has that now been established? And I honestly don't. I honestly don't
Must
know.
have been in doubt.
At
the time.
Indeed. So the records that I've been going on are these records from the City Comptroller as reproduced in that 1955 survey of London. And you can, as I say, I'm reading between the lines here, you can tell that it hinges on this right of way. I think what it probably, my reading, and this is very much me interpreting, I wonder if it perhaps is to do with the extent of the city and the extent of the borough of Southwark. So what happens around this time is the city's jurisdiction, as was happened a bit earlier, the city, if you like, spreads over into Southwark. So my reading, and it's very much my reading, I'm happy to be correcting, is I wonder if it's a debate about the extent of that. Because I would assume that if the city feels it has ownership of the land, they can make a decision about the right of way or not. And so I wonder if it's to do with settling that. There's also, and so that's one theory. The other theory I have is St. George's Fields was perceived as common land at this time, so I wonder if it's the right of way, if there's a kind of a common land usage. That's what it hinges on, but I'm afraid I don't have the expertise to tell you exactly the final legal points there. Yeah, pleasure.
Is the Globe Theatre where it is now?
So the question was, is the Globe Theatre where it is now? No, so the modern Globe is a bit further, let me think, a bit further west than the original. Other questions or comments?
Was it printed on? Is that vellum?
It's parchment. So the question was, what's it printed on? I don't know if I think it's parchment. I don't think it's vellum parchment. So vellum is a higher grade of parchment, but I'm not aware of whether it's vellum or just parchment. Yeah. Any questions from home? From home?
Thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Very interesting. Hope to visit you.
Wonderful. Yes, jolly good. Any final questions from here? Excellent. Well, thank you.
Sorry, can I
Yes,
just say,
please.
because there's so much of it. Where do you start?
So, as in, where do you start in yeah?
Is there 1, 2, 3? Is there a way to follow it?
Yeah, jolly good. So there's a question, sort of, what's the best way around the exhibition? It's designed really that you can do it in any order. So there's not sort of a start or a finish. It's not a start or a finish that way. Incidentally, the oldest document, so the oldest map pretty much the oldest map. There's a nuance there, but the oldest map is behind where we're standing now, and that object dates to 1633, but the view itself is 1560, and incidentally, that will be the subject of our final live from the archive for this exhibition. So we'll be coming back. It'll be the same time next month, first Tuesday of the month, and we'll be taking one last look at yes, one behind us if you're here, Civitas Londinium, the Agas map, the woodcut map. 3 names, all for the same map, and it's a wonderful map. So if you're interested in maps, that might be worth coming along to as well. So thank you all again for coming with us. Person at home, I hope to see you again. Thank you very much. You're welcome. You're welcome.